Hey everyone, it's your girl Amanda Schaefer here, and it's that time once again for yet another Jelly Side Up review. Now let's kick things off with Sappy Syrup, which is what I'll be talking about now. Alright. Now Ray thinks that Patty is not a good influence on Jeremy here. Well, first I gotta say he's seen them spend a lot of time together, being as their boyfriend and girlfriend, and then, as I said just a second ago, he feels like that they're not compatible. Because Patty is kind of stubborn, has a temper, and not much of a rule follower as Jeremy is. And as for Jeremy, it was said, according to Chad, that he's a muddlehead. So Ray tells Chad, I'm gonna have to have you tell Jeremy that he and Patty can't see each other. And Jeremy was not happy to hear that his own best friend / bandmate would betray him. And obviously Ray told Patty the same thing. And as a result, the two were separated. They really missed each other. Enter Bert, and he plays as Patty and Jeremy's go-between, sending the messages, like a message from Jeremy to Patty, and a message from Patty to Jeremy. Something like that. Eventually Ray catches him and says he should not be their go-between. Period. Eventually, Patty and Jeremy decide to just run away to Broadway. Well, actually, this whole thing was Jeremy's idea. But in truth, they didn't. Why? Well, it was said they didn't want to get each other in trouble. So what do they do instead? They had a nice romantic picnic down by the river. And not only did Ray apologize for overreacting, apparently Patty also owed Ray an apology for bad-mouthing his wife Gwen. So, happy endings for that. Patty and Jeremy are allowed to be together. Elsewhere, Brer Rabbit, Brer Fox, and Brer Bear are going on a hike. They hiked so far, they wound up in Canada. Oh my. And then they meet these two guards, by names Alan and Richard. Alan was played by Charlotte Sullivan. The first time I ever saw her was in an episode of Goosebumps called You Can't Scare Me. And she plays the girl Courtney, who's not afraid of anything. And Richard is played by, you know him and love him, the one and only Dick Van Dyke, whom we know as Bert from Mary Poppins, and of course Caractacus Potts in Chitty Chitty Bang Bang, and of course the star of the Dick Van Dyke Show. And let's just say things are kinda rocky between the two. They also tell the Brers, you can't leave unless you show some ID. And Brer Rabbit's like, why do we need ID? We're critters. Critters don't need ID. So they try many different ways to try to get out. And I wouldn't say let's, but they all failed miserably. And hilariously. I usually don't laugh at failures, but how it happened here was just obviously played for laughs, and sometimes when something is meant to be funny, just laugh. Anyhow, Alan thinks that Richard has forgotten pretty much everything they did together. Like their first hug, their first canoe ride, all that jazz. And Richard decides, I think we need to pick one date. Let's say December 13th. To which Alan realized, oh, that's the day we first met. Turns out she was trapped in a snowbank, and Richard saved her from that. And they had a nice peaceful ending right after the Brers decided to play matchmaker for the two. And eventually the couple stopped going at each other's throats and such, and the Brers were eventually allowed to leave. Close call at that. Which brings us to my favorite part. Okay, hang on a second. I'm picking up the paper because I have those parts written down. Not like the last time because I have my favorite parts of those memorized. Okay. And I said Bert sending messages to Patty, which was during the time she and Jeremy were separated. And obviously Bert was sending the messages from Patty to Jeremy as well, at least up until he got caught by Ray. Alright, end of that one. Now we move on to A Royal Banquet. As soon as I saw that title, I was like, ooh. I immediately thought of the one in Cinderella 2 Dreams Come True. As soon as I read the title. Oh, and I should add one more thing about Sappy Syrup before I move on to the next. It was uploaded on Dick Van Dyke's birthday, as a matter of fact, and Dick Van Dyke was obviously casted in it, which is a great little 100th birthday present for him. I am so glad I remembered to say that right before jumping into the next. And it was also uploaded on his birthday. Even better. Okay, now I can start talking about the next one, which, like I said, is called A Royal Banquet. Jeremy has been receiving a lot of secret phone calls. Sorry, I'm trying to adjust the way I'm holding because my hand's getting a little tired, but okay. So, Brer Vulture tells Patty, oh, I think I know what's happening. He's cheating on you. Patty believes him, but then as soon as she said Brer Vulture told me, she was told by Bert, you're listening to him? You know Brer Vulture, he loves to gossip. So, do we find out about those secret phone calls from Jeremy? That Jeremy was receiving? Yes. Yes, we do. Those phone calls were from his mother, Lady Elizabeth Clyde. And the reason she has been calling? Well, Jeremy reveals that he's leaving Splash Mountain to become the Duke of Wellington. And he's been afraid to tell his mother how he really feels about it. So everybody helps him practice. And then when she arrives, Jeremy kind of panics a little bit when he's about to tell her, making up some excuse so his mother doesn't get mad. But he does eventually tell her how he feels, and she gets mad, calling him a disappointment. Oh, and I should also point out that when Jeremy told Patty about becoming the Duke of Wellington, which is also the reason he's leaving Splash Mountain, she was understandably upset. And Ray tells her, you can't leave an argument unresolved. Couples always resolve their arguments. And she does eventually tell Jeremy, if being the Duke of Wellington is something you want to do, I won't stand in your way. And getting back to what happens right after Lady Clyde is upset about Jeremy saying he doesn't want to be the Duke of Wellington, Patty kind of gives her a little pep talk, saying like, I support what Jeremy wants and such, but I know it's not what he wants. And Lady Clyde eventually realizes, I have been a little too harsh on Jeremy. So she eventually tells Jeremy, well, first apologizes for calling him a disappointment, and she does eventually support that he wants to stay in Splash Mountain. And said she's always wanted to live on It's a Small World. And that, my friends, is my favorite Disney song and attraction in all of Disney World. I practically go on that ride every single time I go to Disney World. The last few times I rode, it was just me, my mom, and my brother, because my dad is not too crazy about the song. Which I can understand, because some people find it annoying. Me? Not really. First time I went on that ride, I was singing along to the whole thing. Even when it went to another language, I still sang it in English. Alright, let's get back on track. Elsewhere, Brer Fox and Brer Bear are kind of arguing about the stuff that has been stolen. Brer Fox thinks that Brer Bear stole his axe, while Brer Bear thinks that Brer Fox stole his club. As it turns out, a cast member by the name of Celia, who was played by Marina of Marina and the Diamonds, she took them. The reason? She was getting tired of Brer Bear saying he's gonna knock people's heads clean off. Or maybe I should say critters, because I seriously doubt he would knock the heads off of humans. So Brer Fox and Brer Bear are gonna get their stuff back. But they have to be stealthy. Once they open the closet, they come to an unsettling sight. They realize that Celia has a shrine of Chad. So from their hiding place, they watch her talking to the pictures on her shrine and making out with one of the pictures, and that just made me cringe. Yeah, I cringe every time I watch that part. Just, talk about uncomfortable. Though that part kind of reminded me of a scene in Muppets Most Wanted where Nadia, played by Tina Fey, she starts kissing this picture of Kermit, saying, I will never let you go. And funny as the character is, I cringed at that part as well. Anyway, Celia eventually catches Brer Fox and Brer Bear, and they threaten to tell Chad about the shrine. And not to mention the fact that they caught her tearing the head off of a doll she made out of Chad's wife, Jill. She does give them their stuff back, but she said, please don't tell Chad. I don't want him to think I'm, she says, too quirky, but Brer Fox and Brer Bear came up with something a little psychotic. That was something. So yeah, happy endings all around. Jeremy gets to stay in Splash Mountain after his mother says he can, thanks to a pep talk from Patty, and Brer Fox and Brer Bear get their stuff back. And they agree not to rat Celia out. Alright, now we come to my favorite part of this one, and I said Patty's chat with Elizabeth. Or maybe I should say Lady Elizabeth, because, yeah. After an installment of seeing Chad's mother, we knew at some point, a lot of us were thinking, gee, I wonder when they're gonna show Jeremy's mother. Well, there you have it. She appears in this one. Alright, last but not least for now, we have Slashy Fruit. Slash, 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 slash. Okay. Time to get serious. Now everybody has gathered together and they're watching a horror movie. Well, first I should say that this was meant to be a horror installment. Matter of fact, it is one, because today is Friday the 13th. Okay, like I said, everybody's watching a horror movie, and apparently Jeremy says he loves them. Like my dad, he's a horror movie fanatic himself. My mom, she's not a horror person. Although she's okay with the classics, because there's not a lot of blood or violence in it. In those, I should say. I've watched quite a few classic horror movies myself. Dracula and The Wolfman. They were both great. As in Dracula with Bela Lugosi and The Wolfman with Lon Chaney Jr. Okay, so after the horror movie, ooh, I should add that Brer Rabbit was in quite a pranky mood. Scaring everybody and such. And they had to get themselves ready for a barbecue, and obviously Brer Vulture was helping out as well, and we had someone special hosting this barbecue, and that someone was none other than one of Mickey Mouse's best friends, Donald Duck. Apparently it was his birthday. Now his actual birthday is June 9th, but his two friends from the Three Caballeros, Jose and Panchito, say his birthday is Friday the 13th. Pretty good, yeah? But one by one, everybody starts disappearing. Oh no! Getting captured by the killer! Oh no! How terrifying! So the remaining people have to band together before they get caught by the killer. First they thought it was still Brer Rabbit pranking everybody, but this wasn't him. It was a lot bigger. But then eventually someone else actually comes to the mountain, and that someone is Paul O'Keefe, whom we know as Ross Lane in The Patty Duke Show. And when I saw that he came, ooh, I called this a Patty Duke Show reunion, because he was, of course, obviously, he and Patty Duke were together on The Patty Duke Show, and Paul played Patty Lane's brother, Ross. I know another show where a character has a brother named Ross, and that would be Friends. Monica Geller, played by Courtney Cox, she has a brother named Ross, and he's played by David Schwimmer. Okay, back on track. First, the remaining people on Splash Mountain thought that Brer Vulture was the killer, because he said something about chopping up the Brers, and he was also spotted burying something. We later find out it wasn't what they thought, but more on that in a bit. So Paul says everybody is safe on Big Thunder Mountain. So what do they do once they all reunite? They give Donald one heck of a birthday scare. And Donald actually liked it. He admitted that he likes a good scare. Me? I'm the complete opposite. I don't like a good scare, but I make an exception for Halloween. And I gotta say, they scared Donald silly, because he passed out right after that big scare thing. Turns out all that fake blood was actually barbecue sauce, which was obviously used for the barbecue. I thought, why didn't they use corn syrup? Because apparently the horror film Carrie used it for that scene where Carrie gets pig's blood dumped on her after she was crowned prom queen. But hey, they just used whatever was available. Which of course was barbecue sauce. And boy, oh boy. This was almost like Ghoulish Feasts, except, unlike Ghoulish Feasts, this whole horror thing was a definite prank. Although I was told the episode that Ghoulish Feast is based on was supposed to be a prank, but the prank part was removed entirely. Also, I was told that there was gonna be something else for Jelly Side Up, which was gonna be out last month, but I'll worry about that when the time comes. Anyway, let's get into my favorite part of Slashy Fruit, and I said Donald Duck's arrival. And I've met Donald quite a few times when I went to Disney. First, I met him when I went in 2004, which was the very first time I ever went to Disney World, and he was with Goofy. Well, I met Goofy twice that year, as a matter of fact. Magic Kingdom by himself, and then the second time when he was with Donald in Disney's Hollywood Studios, back when it was called MGM Studios. And then I saw Donald again in 2012, which was my third trip to Disney. These were quite interesting, these past few installments, but we all know there's definitely going to be more coming, so get ready for those when they come out. That wraps up this review. And that's all the time we have. Thank you all so much for watching. Don't forget to like and subscribe, and I'll see you in the next video.